Hello, everyone. Welcome to Social Justice. Let's begin. You could feel the tension the moment Isabella stepped into the glass-walled room on the 27th floor. High ceiling, long mahogany table. 12 men in expensive suits turned toward her, almost in unison. No one stood up, just a reluctant nod and an empty seat at the far end of the table. Isabella Cruz, the only black woman in the room. Also the only one wearing a red thread bracelet made by a child. The man at the head of the table leaned back, crossed his legs, and smiled like he was doing her a favor. "You really think you can handle a $500 million contract?" His words came out soft, but they landed like a slap. Some looked away, some let out a quiet snort. Isabella didn't flinch. She simply placed her leather case on the table, opened the folder. Her fingers tightened slightly around her pen, but her gaze remained calm. She didn't need to speak, because her answer was coming, just a few hours from now. No one in that room knew. Isabella had seen those eyes before, the kind that looked at her like she was a supporting role, as if she was sitting there thanks to luck or a diversity initiative. Not because she earned it. She'd seen that look at DC conferences, in emergency budget meetings, and back in law school, when she wore her mother's old shirts to save money. It was a look made of doubt and dismissal, wrapped in a coat of professionalism. One man at the center of the table nudged a stack of papers toward her. "This is the final version. No need to read too carefully, just protocol." His voice was smooth as silk, but his eyes were steel. Isabella said nothing. She opened the documents, turning each page slowly. Not because she needed time to read, but because every page was a mask, and she needed to see what was behind each one. Her phone buzzed gently inside her coat, a school alert. "Micah is waiting. Please pick up before 6 o'clock. She glanced at it, then locked the screen. She had missed so many recitals, so many end-of-day pickups. Micah, her 9-year-old, had never complained, but sometimes she could hear it anyway. In his silence, just like the silence now in this high-gloss room was saying far too much. She looked up, closed the file slowly, and offered a faint smile. "I'll review it carefully, very carefully." No one in that meeting room knew where Isabella came from. No one asked, because they thought they already knew. They saw a black woman in a tailored dark suit, speaking clearly, carrying a government title. They thought someone like her probably just shuffles papers and waits for the clock. What they didn't see were the years Isabella and her mother lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with newspapers taped over the walls to cover the mold. They didn't see her studying under the hallway light in winter because the electricity had been cut. They didn't see her working night shifts as a receptionist, morning shifts at a grocery store, while raising a child and putting herself through school at 20. She had lived through no one saw that coming. No one expected her to get into law school. No one expected her to graduate top of her class. No one expected her to turn down a corporate offer to work in government, where one wrong number, one weak clause could cost millions of lives. Isabella never mentioned those things. She didn't have to, because the only thing she carried from the past wasn't the wounds, it was the habit. To read carefully, to listen closely, and to wait for just the right moment. They didn't yell at her. They didn't have to. Just a few offhand comments slipped casually into the meeting, as if aimed at no one in particular, yet hitting her precisely. "I heard Ms. Cruz still does school pickups every day. Impressive, really. I'd be a wreck if it were me." Another chuckled, twirling his pen between his fingers. "Honestly, I thought someone more seasoned would be handling a deal like this." The room grew heavier, but no one pushed back, because they were used to this, how comments like that drift by, unchallenged. Isabella only smiled, the kind of smile worn by someone who's heard it all before. She'd heard versions of it in courthouse hallways, in budget briefings, even from coworkers who once called themselves friends. "Late to the meeting, family stuff, huh? I guess this job is more about stability than pressure for you, right?" It all stemmed from the same place, They didn't see her as a professional. They only saw a mother, and assumed that meant weakness. But they forgot one thing. A mother who's learned to endure, stay silent, and carry on is also someone who knows exactly when to strike back. As the meeting room emptied and the lights shifted to a softer golden hue, Isabella stayed behind. In front of her lay the thick document, the contract they assumed she'd skim, then sign, a $500 million deal, prepared with the kind of confidence that often slips into carelessness. She began scanning page by page, not with suspicion, but with the eyes of someone who's seen far too many cracks beneath polished surfaces. Page 12, a financial appendix inserted out of order. Page 27, a budget adjustment clause so vague it was almost laughable. Page 41, anomalies in the bidding sheet, 3 partner companies submitting proposals from the same IP address. Isabella raised an eyebrow. They didn't just underestimate her, they disrespected the system and every taxpayer who trusted it. Part of her wanted to call the authorities right then, but another part, the one who'd been dismissed from too many rooms for not looking like someone in charge, knew better. To hit the target clean, you first let your opponent believe they're safe. She closed the file, took out her phone, photographed each piece of evidence. No words, no expression. She was ready, not to report, but to let them destroy their own deal with their own arrogance. 5:03 p.m. The phone buzzed. The caller ID lit up. E. Halverson, Voltanix CEO. Isabella took a slow breath, then picked up. Ms. Cruz, his voice came through, fast-paced, but still trying to sound composed. We need to finalize everything tonight. On schedule. You understand how critical this deal is, don't you? She let 3 seconds pass, just long enough to make him uncomfortable. I understand, she said, her voice steady, and I'll have your answer very soon. Not now, not rushed. Because right then another message appeared on the screen. Oakwood Elementary. Ms. Cruz, Micah is still waiting. The school will close at 6 o'clock. Her eyes locked on that message. Her chest tightened. Micah, the boy who learned to fold napkins at age 5 to help his mom set tables. Micah, who once whispered, "You don't have to say sorry, Mom. I understand." Even though his eyes said something different, Isabella closed her eyes for just 1 second, then opened them, clear and focused. The contract still lay open on the table. At the bottom of the page, the line marked Authorized Government Signatory. Blank. She looked at the pen, then at the phone screen. She knew signing would be faster, easier, quieter, but sometimes kindness toward yourself is its own kind of duty. She smiled, a flicker in her eyes that no one in that boardroom had ever seen. Isabella picked up the pen, not to sign, but to type. Each keystroke deliberate, precise, like incisions slicing through the glossy armor Voltanix had worn for years. Subject, termination of negotiation. Contract, Amher VNX FED 500. The body of the email was only 3 lines. Following review, the Department of Economic Development has identified financial inconsistencies and federal bidding violations in the contract proposed by Voltanix. As such, formal negotiations are terminated, effective immediately. She hit send. No dramatic soundtrack, just the soft ding of a message sent, like a quiet verdict that needed no jury. Minutes later, her phone wouldn't stop ringing. A government aide texted, "What did you just do? Comms room is in chaos." 10 minutes in, the first headline dropped. Government cancels $500 defense contract amid fraud concerns. At minute 13, the Voltanix CEO called back. This time, no courtesy, no pretense. "You'll regret this, Cruz. We have friends in places you can't imagine." Isabella didn't respond. She set the phone down, removed her headset. Outside the window, the sun was beginning to set. She stood up, grabbed her coat, turned off the lights. The meeting had ended, but the lesson had only just begun. Oakwood Elementary was almost dark now. Only a soft yellow glow spilled from the hallway windows. The playground outside had fallen silent. Swings moved gently in the early evening breeze. Isabella crossed the empty parking lot, her heels tapping lightly on damp concrete. Then she saw him, Micah, sitting on the long bench, backpack hugged close to his chest, his feet swinging, eyes lighting up the moment he saw her. "I'm sorry," she said, crouching down. "It's okay," Micah smiled. "I bet you just did something big, huh?" Isabella laughed, a laugh lighter than any she had let out in years. She didn't tell him about the $500 million deal she just shut down. She didn't mention the powerful men she'd exposed, or the system that was now rattling from a single email, because the biggest battle today wasn't in the contract. It was in the choices she made, not bowing to insult, not signing just to keep things quiet, not continuing to sacrifice herself to prove she was deserving. On the drive home, Micah talked about a math problem he solved in class, how he wanted to learn swimming, and reminded her about the dessert she once promised to make but forgot. Isabella listened, no checking emails, no glancing at the phone, because today she reclaimed something far more valuable: time, dignity, and peace within herself. And if there's one thing to say to those who smirked at her in that boardroom, it would simply be this: never underestimate a Black woman, especially when she's a mother. If this story moved you, don't forget, subscribe to Social Justice for more powerful stories, and check out the next video. We promise it's one you won't want to miss. See you in the next one.